live from the Counterpunch Media mobile studios in Grand Blanc, Michigan. It's time for real lives, real families, real fitness. It's time for Derek Noel Fitness.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 10 of Derek Noel Fitness Live. Got a good topic today. We're going to have a lot of fun today. It is going to have a ton of information all about those ab things. Those things that some of us like to say are in the back of the fridge instead of the front. But everyone has a six-pack. We're going to be talking about abs today. It's going to be a great topic. I'm looking forward to expanding on some of this information. And as always, remember, if you have any questions about anything I am talking about, you can drop a line in the comments, and at the end of the show, I'm going to make sure that I get to those. But for now, phone is going down. So, first off, I just wanted to give a quick thanks and remind you that if you can't watch this video all the way through, that's fine. You can always find it recorded here on my Facebook page, facebook.com/DerekNoel, in case you forgot where that is. You can listen to it on ipmnation.com/counterpunch if you'd like the radio version of this. You can also find it on YouTube. And speaking of the YouTube channel, if you have a chance, please find it in the link that I posted earlier and give us a like and a subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to grow that YouTube channel, so every like on videos and every subscribe to the channel counts. We have a few different shows on there, so you'll have your choice. All the content is really good. I'm really looking forward to Mr. Brian Brody returning with All Natural Being, hopefully sooner rather than later, but he is still recovering from his brain surgery, so definitely got to take the slow and steady route for that. Also, quick thanks to Wayne, the producer, who has actually been running IPM Nation Sneak Speak, and thanks to all of you. I believe I am ranked number 4 right now on IPM Nation's shows, so let's keep that rolling. I always like to keep growing. If you know anyone who, especially with this topic, you think will get a lot out of it, by all means, check it out. Share it, make a comment, tag someone in it. You can tag people right in comments, so they can just be pulled in when they get the notification. Push notifications are a blessing and a curse. They're a blessing for people like me, or they're a curse for people who get tagged in literally everything, also like me. But anything you can do to help spread the word will help out a lot. Now, let's get to the topic at hand. We have training arms, we have training chest, we have training back, we have training legs, and then we have training your core, or like, I'm doing a core workout today. A lot of people think that core is only abs, but I'm here to tell you right now that while we are talking about the abs, I did want to separate the two. Your core is technically everything basically in your torso. So basically your abs, even your obliques, which are considered in your abs, which we're going to talk about today, even your lower back, your spinal erectors, and for some people, I consider the glutes part of your core too. This entire system of tons of muscles make up your core. Everybody wants to work out and they think they can do a million crunches and their entire core is going to get strong. I'm telling you right now that you do need an all-inclusive program to make sure that everything gets involved and worked so that you can properly strengthen and mobilize everything. Because if you are lacking in one area, then it's going to show up down the road, whether it's in low back pain, which we'll talk about a little bit later because your abs actually play a pretty big role in that, or if you just can't move, if you're one of those people who can only bend a little bit or extend a little bit, which again we'll talk about, this might be for you. So, what are your abs then? Well, I think everyone knows about the six-pack, which, by the way, I'm going to tell you the technical terms right now. I don't expect you to remember them because honestly, for the average person, you don't really need to remember specific muscle groups, nor do I expect anyone really to. It's always nice being able to talk technically with people like physical therapists or something like that. But for the normal person, you know, you have your six-pack abs, you have your obliques, so you have like those side muscles like, oh man, my sides are looking real nice today. Those kinds of things. So six-pack, it's the one that everyone knows about. It's the one that everyone wants to show, and it helps with this forward bending motion, which is called flexion of the spine. So it helps you bend forward. The second, I'm going to say grouping, because technically there are two different muscles for your obliques. You have your internal and external obliques. They deal with twisting side to side and bending from side to side. So anytime you're doing motion twisting or bending side to side, you're working with those obliques. The last one, and honestly the most important, especially in my eyes, is the transverse abdominis, which can be reduced down to TVA. And that muscle actually is all-inclusive of your entire core. So by strengthening, actually most lower back pain is caused by one of two things: either weak glutes, so a weak butt, which you can strengthen by, you know, doing things like squats or step-ups, split squats, whatever, glute bridges, things like that to strengthen the glutes. That might help out, or a weak transverse or TVA, which I will also talk about how to work all of these things. But that transverse abdominis helps stabilize everything, including the spine. So it's a super, super important muscle, especially if you have any lower back pain. Hopefully, if you do have a little bit of low back pain, you know where you might be able to go from here. And if not, ask me a question, drop it below. I kind of hijacked from my own room and didn't tell Wayne about. So I'm sure he was probably a little bit confused. You can't see it yet. It's down by my feet, but you will see it soon because it involves being up here. So there's a doctor named, his name is Stuart McGill. He spent, I believe, right around 40 years examining and studying and researching the lower back. And I'll talk about the lower back, or the spine in general, a little bit, because it kind of plays in with how to train it later. Which is funny because you'd think, oh, hey, my spine is in my back. What does that have to do with my abs? All in due time. All in due time. But basically, the extent of his research broke it down so that the commonly accepted way to train your core properly is in three different ways, which are, I like to call the three antis. You have anti-extension, so preventing your spine from bending backwards, or hyperextending, which is this hyperextended spine where I'm backwards. So if you're doing a bridge or something like that. We have anti-lateral flexion, which is, so lateral flexion is this bending side to side. And then we have anti-rotation, which is rotating or twisting. First off, let's talk about anti-extension. Like I said, it's the bending backwards of the spine. So, quick technical thing, bending backwards or fully straightening your spine or over straightening your spine is extension. Rounding yourself forward is flexion. Or, so when I said your rectus abdominis works with flexion, that's what we're working on. And then your transverse is involved and helps with basically extension. Of your arms and your legs down, and dead bug is it's not it wants to pull us back, so it's wrapped around a rig or something like that. Make sure it's wrapped around something. I don't want you snapping yourself. So anti-extension, we have to prevent ourselves from being arched or extended, so our core has to be involved in order to keep ourselves nice and straight. And then anytime you raise your hands overhead, your body also has to fight that extension. So doing a press and then raising it up and still preventing yourself from arching backwards, and then lowering it right back up, down, and up. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to release videos this week. So for all of these exercises, I will record videos tomorrow during the day, and I will drop them on this Facebook page. If that helps out at all, I really think that it will. The side bending. So now we're talking about our obliques. when we're working side to side. By the way, this can be a kind of useful tool. I like being a little bit more pragmatic and a little bit more inclusive of everything else, and more generally prepared when it comes to physical fitness. I'm not huge on specializing into tiny little isolated exercises, but if you're into bodybuilding, maybe you need to. Or honestly, for bodybuilding, you don't really want to train your obliques because you're looking for that nice V shape, that V taper. And if you have big strong obliques, you're going to end up looking a little bit bulkier, which you can kind of counteract by getting bigger lats, but then you see where we're going here. You have to keep building. It's bodybuilding. But if you're doing something like Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting and you don't really care about your V taper, that V, or your waist size or anything like that, then training your obliques to be big and strong is really good. By the way, if you're doing any of the big lifts like deadlifts or squats, you're automatically working basically your entire core because you have to be super braced, which is really good. So, lateral flexion, bending sideways. Anti-lateral flexion. We're trying to prevent from bending sideways. Now, we have a dumbbell here. I just kind of grabbed the only heavy one that I have. There are a few different things you can do with this. Basically, a few different ways to carry them. So the first one is going to be a farmer's carry, which pretend I have two in my hands, and I just stand up nice and tall. A lot of people like to be hunched over with this, but then all of a sudden we're in that loaded flex position, which isn't good, remember? So we want to stand up nice and tall, pull those shoulders back, think super good posture, keep those abs nice and tight, and then you take slow, steady steps with these. You don't want to run through, but you have to keep yourself standing up. Just kidding, is an overhead carry or a waiter's carry. Now you're not going to be able to see the dumbbell up there, but I want to talk about shoulder positioning because you should only do this if you have good shoulder mobility, which will be a whole other topic for another day. But if I just pop this up real quick over my head, I have a straight line up and down. A lot of people will have the weight out here and they'll have to walk like this. The goal is to have that weight directly over your head because any small move and you're going to be wibbly wobbly and keeping everything, and then you have to keep everything super tight. Like I said, that can be taxing on the shoulder, especially if you don't have proper mobility. You want that arm to be straight up and down, and you want to think about your hand being directly over your ear. Now, real quick, while I recover, we are going to take a quick little break.
You're listening to Derek Noel Fitness here on IPMNation.com/counterpunch. He'll bring the smarts. Now the sweat, well, that's up to you.
And we are back. Bum, bum, bum. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I would love to be able to answer some questions at the end of the show. And let's recap, just in case someone is just coming in right now. We're talking about your abs today, ab training specifically. So we're talking about a few different muscles or your ab muscle group, which you have your rectus abdominis. And we are back. Power has been saved. We are good to go. So, we've talked about a few different things. First off, we've talked about what the core is versus what the abs are. Your core is all-inclusive, basically from your solar plexus, you know, that part that hurts really bad when you get hit in, down all the way through. I like to include the glutes whenever I'm talking about your core. Your abs, though, are the muscles in here, specifically your rectus abdominis, that six-pack, those obliques, your internal and external obliques, because they both have varying multiple functions, and then your transverse abdominis, or TVA, which is all-inclusive and helps stabilize and keep everything super tight. Proper training is considered the three antis. You have anti-extension, anti-lateral flexion, and anti-rotation. I've already covered anti-extension and anti-lateral flexion, so preventing the spine from bending backwards, and then preventing the spine from bending side to side. The third one, we're going to talk about anti-rotation, or the twisting of the spine. So my legs are locked forward. You can't really see my legs, but my hips are still facing forward. I'm twisting. Now, before we can talk about how to train anti-rotation, I want to talk about the actual spine real quick. Your spine can be divided up into 4, but basically 3 different areas, especially for the purposes of what we're talking about. The 4th one is down by your tailbone. Doesn't really get too involved in any of this. Number 1, you have your cervical spine, which is your neck. And you have the greatest range of motion in your neck because we have to be able to look around, because we don't want to have to turn our entire body side to side in order to look at people or look around, or else humans probably wouldn't have survived as long as they have. We're able to move our necks around, and we have a really good range. Now, here's a nice little side point on this. If you are playing a sport that is one side dominant, so softball or baseball or something like that, where we're always swinging out of one side, maybe you will have really good range of motion on one side of your neck, but because you never use the other side, you don't have so much. So it is possible to lose that mobility over time. The second part of your spine is the back, and if you're doing this properly, you're going to feel those sides really working. If I go past here, that's not terrible, but the entire point is anti-rotation, so I'm preventing myself from rotating back. I'm starting where I'm fighting it, and then I'm forcing it forward, and I'm controlling it back. So obviously this is a one-sided exercise. You need to hit both sides. And that can be said for the single arm carries that we were talking about when it came to anti-lateral flexion earlier. Those are wood chops is what I was just talking about. I got it confused. Pal-off press, you're actually starting at this midline. So I'll face this way, midline. I bring that band or cable into my chest and then out. So this one is actually really good because that as you get farther away from your body, it's going to be more tension and more give because the angles change and your body is in a less efficient position, I should say. So keeping yourself in, nice controlled movements. Again, it's a single side exercise, so you have to do both sides. A nice way to get started on that is to accumulate a certain amount of time. So if you can start by hitting a minute of going in and out on one side and a minute for a total of 2 minutes, that'll be a really good starting point to help make sure that your core stays nice and strong. You can do a few different things with the Pal-off press too. You can start doing side steps back and forth, and again keeping that in the middle, which is you have to take is good position. My back stays a vacuum.